People think they know my story. They see the photos, the achievements, the public life. But there's a part of my story no one talks about, a chapter that ended quietly. So quietly that most people don't even know it existed. My first marriage, not the one people know about, not the one in official records, the one before that, the one that ended not with announcements, but with silence. And what happened after it ended changed everything, not just in my life, but in who I became. Today, I'm going to tell you what really happened, not as a prince, but as a man who lived through something the palace never wanted discussed. Let me be clear about something first. I don't owe anyone this story. My personal life has always been private by choice and by necessity, but silence creates rumors, and rumors create narratives that aren't true. So let me tell you what actually happened. There was a marriage before the one people know about. Not official in the way the world understands, but real in every way that mattered to me. It wasn't announced publicly. It wasn't celebrated with ceremonies the world could see. It was quiet, private, and it was mine. She was someone I chose, not someone chosen for me. That distinction matters more than people realize, because in my life, choice is rare. Most decisions are made for me long before I'm consulted. But this one, this person I chose, and for a brief time, I thought that choice would be allowed to stand. I was wrong. The marriage didn't end because love failed. It ended because the system couldn't accommodate it. She wasn't from the right family. She didn't fit the structure. She represented the unknown, and the unknown in royal life is always eliminated, not violently, quietly. Through pressure so subtle, you don't realize it's there until it's already worked. I remember the exact moment I knew it was over. Not because she said goodbye, but because I saw the choice I had to make, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that choosing her meant losing everything else. My position, my family's trust, my future. The stability of everything I was raised to protect. That's not an exaggeration. That was the reality presented to me. Not as a threat, as a fact. You can have this marriage, or you can have your role, not both. I didn't decide immediately. I fought quietly. I delayed. I tried to find a way to make both exist. But there was no way. Royal systems don't negotiate. They wait, they pressure. They create conditions where the choice becomes obvious. And eventually I made it, not because I wanted to, but because I understood what refusing would cost, not just me, but her. Because if I had insisted, she would have become a target, not physically, but socially, emotionally. She would have been blamed for every conflict, every tension. Every moment my family questioned my loyalty, I couldn't do that to her. So I let her go, not coldly, not easily, but deliberately. I ended the marriage to protect her from the consequences of staying. That's the part people never understand. Sometimes love means stepping back, even when every part of you wants to stay. The first few months after it ended were the hardest, not because I regretted the decision, but because I was grieving something no one else acknowledged had existed. There was no public sympathy, no acknowledgement of loss, because officially nothing had happened. I was expected to move forward as if nothing had changed, but everything had changed. I had learned something I can never unlearn, that my life, no matter how privileged it looks, is not mine. It belongs to a system, a legacy, a future that was decided before I was born, and personal happiness is always secondary to that. I stopped writing poetry for a while, not because I had nothing to say, but because I had too much, and saying it, even indirectly, felt dangerous. So I buried it. I focused on duty, on responsibility, on becoming the leader everyone expected me to be. But inside, something had broken. Not dramatically, quietly. The part of me that believed choice was possible, that died. And what replaced it was acceptance. Acceptance that my life would be structured, that love, if it existed, would exist within boundaries. That freedom was an illusion I had entertained too long. Not long after the arrangement was made, the marriage everyone knows about, to Sheikha bint Said bin Thani al Maktoum, my cousin from a trusted family, someone who understood the rules before she entered. I want to be clear about something. I entered that marriage with respect. She did nothing wrong. She is a good person, a good mother, someone who has fulfilled every expectation placed on her. But respect is not the same as what I felt before. And I think she knows that, not because I've said it, but because some things don't need words. We both understand what this marriage is. It's stability, it's continuity, it's the foundation for the future. But it's not the marriage I would have chosen if choice had been mine. And living with that knowledge every day is harder than people realize. You wake up next to someone you respect, someone you share children with, someone who is part of your life in every practical way. But emotionally, there's distance, not hostility, just absence. The absence of what could have been if life had been different. People ask why I write so much poetry, why the themes are always the same: distance, longing, memory, loss. The answer is simple. Poetry is the only place I can be honest. The only place where emotion doesn't need permission, where truth doesn't create consequences. I write because I have to, because if I don't, everything I carry turns inward, and inward grief destroys, so I release it in words, in verses that people read as beautiful, without understanding their confessions. Every poem about distance is about the gap between duty and desire. Every line about memory is about the life I lived briefly before it was taken. Every word about silence is about the things I can never say directly. People analyze my poetry endlessly. They ask who it's about. They search for clues, and I let them, because the beauty of poetry is that it can be true without being specific. It protects the people involved. It allows me to express without exposing. And it keeps the part of me that still feels human alive. What happened after my first marriage ended changed me in ways I'm still discovering. I became more guarded, more careful, more disciplined, because I learned that attachment creates vulnerability. And vulnerability in my world is dangerous. I stopped believing that personal happiness was achievable, not in a depressing way, just in a realistic way. I accepted that my life serves a purpose larger than my feelings, and that purpose requires sacrifice, constant sacrifice of time, of choice, of the version of myself I might have been in a different life. But I also became stronger, not the loud kind of strength, the quiet kind, the kind that carries weight without complaining, that fulfills duty without resentment, that moves forward even when part of you remains in the past. People see composure, they see discipline, they see leadership. What they don't see is the cost. The nights when memory is louder than sleep. The moments when I wonder what life would have looked like if I had chosen differently. The weight of knowing that the person I loved most had to leave because loving me was impossible. That cost is invisible, but it's real, and I carry it every single day. I'm telling this story not for sympathy, but for clarity, because people make assumptions about my life that aren't true. They assume power means freedom. It doesn't. They assume privilege means choice. It doesn't. They assume silence means I don't feel. It doesn't. I feel everything. I just learned early that expressing it changes nothing. So I carry it quietly, and I focus on what I can control. My work, my responsibilities, my role as a leader, those things matter. They serve people beyond myself, and that purpose, that ability to contribute to something larger, gives meaning to the sacrifice. But it doesn't erase the sacrifice. It just makes it bearable. What happened after my first marriage ended is this: I learned that duty and desire rarely align, that love, when it conflicts with legacy, always loses, that personal happiness is a privilege I was never promised, and that strength is not avoiding pain, it's carrying it without letting it destroy you. I moved forward. I married again, appropriately this time. I became a father. I lead. But part of me remains in that earlier chapter, the chapter where I believed choice was possible, where love felt free, where I was just a man, not a symbol. That part didn't die. It just learned to exist quietly, in memory, in poetry, in the spaces no one else sees. And maybe that's enough, not perfect, but enough. If this story gave you understanding, I'm glad, not because I need validation, but because silence creates distance, and distance creates assumptions. Sometimes the truth, even when painful, is better than mystery. Thank you for listening.